Legendary Pokemon. They just have a certain look, an aura if you will, usually accompanied by some sort of story, lore, or side quest, really any extra treatment that an average Pokemon just doesn't really get. Except for a few. Throughout the years, there's a small group of Pokemon who got these legendary treatments, whether that be through their in-game story, an unusual method to obtain them, or just purely based off looks. That paired with the fact I'm betting a lot of these Pokemon some of us mistook for legendaries were probably when we were younger and more naive. Listen, I'm not here to judge. There were some wild things I used to believe about Pokemon during my childhood. The playground rumors were no joke. Like, how was I supposed to know you couldn't actually take the rocket into space to catch Jirachi in Pokemon Emerald? With limited internet access back then to actually fact-check these rumors, our imaginations definitely got the best of us. Now, what better way to start than from where it all started? Generation 1's Arcanine. If you thought this was a legendary back in the day, well, you're not wrong for thinking so. Arcanine was clearly originally planned to be a legendary. Not only is he quite literally given the title Legendary Pokemon, but that one episode in the anime literally shows him next to the 3 legendary birds. Besides, just look how majestic this good boy looks. He'll forever be a legendary in our hearts. Next up is going to be Rotom. Now, he's definitely a lot more common now, but I think the confusion started when he was first introduced way back in Generation 4. You see, he wasn't a regular encounter you just find in the grass. To find him, you'd have to head to an old creepy mansion in Eterna Forest, specifically at nighttime. Once there, one of the rooms inside will have a TV flashing. If you go up and hit the TV, a Rotom will pop out and the battle will commence. The kicker here is that for some reason, the legendary battle music plays during this fight, despite Rotom not being a legendary. I think the combination of his unique encounter method, the legendary music that plays, and the fact you can only encounter one Rotom led to a lot of people confusing him for a legendary or even a mythical because of his small size, which actually brings us to our next Pokemon. The Pokemon god himself, Arceus. Now, you're probably thinking, surely the god of all Pokemon himself is a legendary Pokemon. And, well, technically no. Arceus is actually classified as a mythical Pokemon, which, even purely based off looks, is strange. Mythicals tend to be smaller and more cute in design, whereas Arceus has a bigger, more powerful design, closer matching those in the legendary category. So, as for the confusion, I think it really is just a mix of both design and the constant confusion between mythicals and legendaries themselves, which once again brings us to our next one. And that's mythicals as a whole. Since Generation 1 and onwards, mythicals have been confused for legendaries for as long as I can remember. In fact, it's one of the most common mix-ups I see even to this very day. I think it really just boils down to the fact that a lot of people don't really know the difference between the two, which you can't really blame people for. It can get kinda confusing, and the two are so close that it's easy to mix them up. The most common way people explain it is legendaries being catchable in game Pokemon, where mythicals are usually tied to an exclusive event. But even that theory has some holes in it. I could honestly go way deeper into this, but that could be a whole video in and of itself. This next Pokemon actually ties in quite nicely, and that's Ditto. Once again, this is one of those ones that I feel I hear about a lot less than I did back in the day. Where did the confusion come from? Well, it's usually a lot less common than your average Pokemon, sure, but I think the root of it kinda tied into the theory of Ditto being failed attempts at cloning the mythical Pokemon Mew during the process of trying to create Mewtwo. Next on our list is Spiritomb. Like Rotom, he kinda falls under the same category of having a unique way of encountering him, which I think led to the confusion. To encounter him, not only did you need an item called the Odd Keystone, but with said item, you'd have to go into the underground and talk to another player 32 times. Then, head to a location specifically meant for Spiritomb called the Hollowed Tower just to awaken it. All that, topped with it having no other evolutions, it clearly not being a Pokemon you can find anywhere else, and its design as a whole just looking very complete, with the touch of this isn't your everyday Pokemon kind of vibe that legendaries tend to give off. And yes, to be completely transparent, this one I myself thought was some sort of legendary or mythical as a kid. Up next is Volcarona. For starters, its design as a whole just once again is very legendary-like. It doesn't look like your typical bug Pokemon. This, topped with the fact you find him as a static encounter inside his own ruined shrine sort of thing that has a carving of him on the wall, the fact it's at a whopping level 70 when you encounter it, and the story itself even ties into it as you encounter Team Plasma in the same location. If all this doesn't scream legendary, I don't know what does. Volcarona isn't the only Generation 5 Pokemon that had people confusing it for a legendary. Zoroark also fell into this trap. For starters, Zoroark got his own movie, which not always, but majority of the time was given to mythicals and legendaries. That, topped with the fact that just like some of the others on this list, Zoroark also had a cool unique mission to obtain him. For starters, you technically needed an event Pokemon to begin this encounter, that Pokemon being the legendary beasts. With them in your game, if you headed to Lostlorn Forest, you'd eventually reach this trailer where a woman would run out growling and then attack you. Once the battle began, the Pokemon would be none other than one of the legendary beasts. At least, that's what it appears to be. It's actually a Zoroark who both disguised itself as a legendary and the woman who attacked you in the first place. Before we get to the last Pokemon on this list, if you've made it this far and are enjoying the video, consider liking and subscribing. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. That being said, it's time for the final Pokemon. And that Pokemon is Unknown. If the design of these strange Pokemon wasn't enough as it is, the fact you find them in ancient ruins definitely adds to the mystery. That, and these strange Pokemon always seem to be linked to legendaries, ruins, and just mysteries as a whole. They've appeared in so many instances, such as Pokemon the Movie 3, that Arceus cutscene from Heart Gold and Soul Silver. They're hidden across the Legends Arceus game, and have appeared in numerous different anime episodes over the years, once again typically surrounding some sort of ancient mystery. Which of these Pokemon have you mistook for a legendary before? Or maybe there's one that wasn't on this list. Either way, let me know in the comments. Until next time, keep exploring, keep catching, and as always, stay legendary.